And let's get this ball rolling, guys. Sharing. Here we are. Okie dokie, ladies and gentlemen. So today we are talking about professional networking while in high school and college. I do want to say that the insight we're going to share today does also count towards if you're, a young professional, even if you're someone in your 30s. The wisdom we're sharing is very useful regardless of age. However, it is the most beneficial when you are in high school, and it becomes a little better when you're in college, but then from there, it starts to deteriorate in value because, again, relationships take time to build. And when you're younger, it's easier to build these relationships for so many reasons we're going to cover, versus when you're an older gentleman or lady. Having said that, I'm going to run down. I'm going to quickly explain to you guys what is networking. When I was your age, I thought the term networking was egregious. I hated it. It sounded like we were using people. Networking, so calculating, right? It was only in my senior year in college that I truly understood what real networking could be if utilized properly. And basically, networking is the process of getting to know people, building relationships with those people, and maintaining those relationships. And more than that, it is the process of trying to help others while meeting in a capacity that helps you. Some folks would say that networking is a game of using individuals, but as this document, which I will send to y'all, shows, that is poor networking. That is when you are using people, when you're being manipulative. The purest form of networking in the professional sense is when you are trying to connect with like-minded individuals who are where you want to be or are in an avenue that is where you want to go. But more importantly, you want to build meaningful ties to them. You want to be able to go to their son's graduation or their sister's birthday. Yeah, but also you want to be able to connect with them for professional advice or to team up on a project or for direction on a job opportunity or scholarship program. But more importantly than that, you want to be able to also help them. In life, there is a game of giving and taking. And the finest and often the brightest in the social sector are the ones who are very eager to give, but wise in how they take. And that is the game of networking. Trying to help others, trying to empower others, while also knowing the benefits those individuals have for you, and then seeing in a wise capacity how you can utilize those benefits without being manipulative, without trying to be a taker, but also in a cautious manner, growing your own professionalism. It is never selfish to try to improve who you are or improve your standing in life. Don't ever feel like it is. It is only selfish when you begin to try to bury others professionally in that effort, and you're not willing to help folks that are younger than you, have less experience, and you succeed. I will give you a great example from my professional experience. Our organization, Parchment, has several brilliant volunteers. We have Jacob Potu, who is now an on-call for our team. We have Trey Rodriguez. These are guys who are helping me develop content, organize things, handle correspondence. They are volunteers. I reached out to them for assistance. I knew them through networking opportunities. I met Jacob when I was in college, when we were working together on school projects. I would connect with him afterwards, invite him to go have drinks with me, and build that relationship. It was only after 3 years of knowing him that I made an ask. Again, I was not using the guy. I was wanting to just build relationships, and that's the biggest part of networking. But eventually it came to the point where I realized him and I collided and merged in meaningful ways. He's a professor. I have this program that I wanted to refine. So I invited him to be a part of our program as a coordinator, and he accepted. The relationship we fostered and intentionally maintained over the years resulted in a mutual benefit. Jacob now has experience he would not have had otherwise. I've been able to connect him to people such as local leaders, business leaders, school leaders, a couple of state representatives. So he has professionally improved through the program. I've also helped him gain networking experience of his own that he could use. If he was to leave the program, he could easily reach out to some of the colleagues he's connected with and say, hey, I would love your advice on this. And that's because he met them through Parchment. So that is mutual networking. That is networking at its purest. It is me keeping in touch with someone, even if it's only once a month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months or a year, but having that tie to them where they know who I am, and then eventually finding a reason to become more professionally tethered to each other. Does that kind of make sense to any of you guys so far? Cool. And that goes same thing for Trey. I'm going to use Trey as another example. He is a college student right now at Tarrant County College. He wants to be a leader. His long-term goals are to own his own, will be a pastor, as well as lead a leadership camp with his church. I knew I needed extra manpower to help develop this program and build relationships and serve you guys in a more intelligent way. So I invited Trey. I was asking him to share his time and his energy with us. In return, I've tried to serve him and support him. I've given him authority to create a leadership program or camp through Parchment that we're currently refining, and we're going to introduce to you guys later on in the year, as well as next semester. But I've given him that opportunity to use our organization as a conduit to refine his professional experience, begin pursuing his own dreams and goals in life, as well as allow him to have something he can put in his resume as he continues in college and when he becomes, a grad student and eventually a pastor. So that is networking in a pure form. I did not just ask this gentleman to support and work with us, out of the blue. I talked with him for a while. I'd hung out with him. I tried to learn who he is and how I can help him. And then when I realized there was a way I could support him that also just so happened to benefit me and the program and serve you guys, we launched at it. So in your life, that is going to be what networking is. Networking is making friends with people that you agree with and like and enjoy, but also are tethered in some capacity to what you want to do in your career. And depending on the complexity of your career choice, networking might be a little more complicated to find. If you want to be a major athlete at a sports team, networking might be trying to get involved with different clubs that are in sports, reaching out to different coaches across the state for advice. And it's going to be more work than if you want to be a park ranger. And then it's a little easier because you can get involved with local volunteer groups that are involved in environmentalism. You can connect then with forests, all that good stuff, if that makes sense. So that's pretty much it in a rundown. Baseline networking versus strategic networking. I'm going to give you guys some kind of terminologies of the differences, and then we'll get straight to strategies. And then from there, I'll stop the recording, and then we can start actually working together on figuring out how we can serve and support you guys. So baseline networking is what most people do in life. Very few folks like you guys are willing to share your time and energy to try to learn these things. And more importantly, very few folks try to do this until they're in their late 20s, early 30s, when they start to realize certain challenges and goals in life and start to feel like they need to pursue their dreams. So baseline networking is basically this. You go to school and you randomly meet someone. I randomly met Jacob in one of my classes. That was basic networking. I did not intend to meet him. I just so happened to meet him, and then I've maintained that relationship. Baseline networking could be me reaching out to one of my boss's bosses and saying, hey, dude, I would love to learn from you. Or me going to an office event and my boss's boss is there and I run into him and we begin a relationship that way, right? It hinges heavily on chance. There's no intent to it. However, it will benefit you. Basic networking often it requires you being involved in your community, but it does lean heavily on chance. It's kind of like if you decide I want to go on that field trip with the school that I'm not required to go on, but I decide I want to go on because it sounds fun. And then while I'm there, I just so happen to meet my future girlfriend or someone who is in a job that I like, right? It was chance, but you were still taking some initiative. Strategic networking is where the real game begins. This is where you're going to start doing research. You're going to think, okay, where do I want to be in life? Who do I want to be? And what is my fate if I do not get ahead now? Strategic networking is what we primarily are talking about today. And that is where we get to the rules. So here we are, guys. This is how you strategically network. And real quick, before I continue, after I stop recording, I would love to learn if this is stuff that you guys have already been told by other people. That way I can try to refine the content and start sharing things that you might not have been told yet. Getting back to it though, this is kind of how you can start strategically networking if you've never done it before, or if you're very novel to it. First, identify your short and long-term goals professionally and personally. Short-term goals could be, I want to get all A's, or I want to join this. No, I take it back. Short-term goals professionally can be, I want to join a fellowship program, or I want to start a small project or a venture or something. Long-term goals could be, I want to be a business leader, or I want to own a bank, or I want to own a nonprofit, or I want to just be a high-ranking person within one of those organizations, or I want to be a sports athlete. Those are long-term goals. Long-term and short-term goals personally could be, I want to be a better person. I want to be braver. I want to be more engaged in life. I want to be, I don't know, happier. Those are personal goals that still require some networking, you know? So you got to identify these things. And oftentimes you're going to know them already or have an idea of them. And then you just have to really start reflecting on how serious are you about those goals. Warren, I believe it's Warren Buffett, I could be wrong, had a rule. He would ask someone to list the top 10 things they want to do in life, or within a year, or within a month. And then after they've made that list, he would look through it, scratch off all of them except for the first 3. And he basically would say, look, you have a lot of great goals, son, but that's a lot of goals. And people are people. You know, school's probably a burden on you guys. Work, if you have any jobs, other stuff gets in the way. So it is the top 3 goals that apparently, in your interpretation, matter the most. And those are your missions. You know, they may be missions for a year, they may be missions for a lifetime, but those are the ones you need to invest your time in. Everything else apparently is tolerable to be set on the sidelines already. So just toss it out for now, focus on those top 3, and then history will tell its tale. So that's how Warren Buffett looked at things. And that's kind of how I'm stressing for you guys. It's a very humbling thing to list all your goals in life. I've done the same, and realized that you will not be able to accomplish all of them. And that's not to denote or, you know, demoralize you, but just to let you know, if you want to do something right, it oftentimes takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and it often will demand that you identify the top 3 things that you want to do in life. And then that is what you have to focus your energy on. Sacrifice, basically, to achieve your dreams. So yeah, that's it. Research organizations, groups, and people. This is the part where you start taking initiative. This is why it's strategic, because now you're researching it, you know? I will give you an example. I currently in my day job do a mix between project management, government relations, and community organizing. I knew I wanted to be in some capacity in that industry. However, I did not fully understand it. When I heard about the Bill Archer Fellowship Program, that was pure luck. That was my professor saying, class is over today. We're all going to go to this workshop to learn about this program, right? That was me being just stupid lucky. However, after I graduated, I began to think more strategically. I looked into something called the Heritage Foundation Academy program. That was me taking the initiative to research educational opportunities that also had networking aspects that could lean towards my goals of getting into that industry, right? The Bill Archer program helped me a lot, but researching organizations and groups that lean towards my long-term goals is what really made the difference. You know, I was able to apply for the program. I got into the program. I met a lot of great people. And then it led to me getting my current job as a state director. It was me researching what I wanted, what I suspected would help get me to where I want to be. then meeting those people, building those relationships, growing with them, and then asking them for advice. And from asking for advice from some of them who were far better than I was, they were able to connect me to an opportunity. So that is strategic networking. And it's going to hinge heavily on what you guys want to do. If my memory serves me right, Elena, you want to be in nursing, right?
An orthodontist.
Orthodontist. Okay, so that's okay. So this is cool. This is where strategic networking is going to have to be involved. I would say, one, obviously we talked about this in the past, but you're going to need to take the initiative to identify all the orthodontists within your city, and then reach out to them for advice. That is strategic networking with people, individuals, right? And that's where you're asking for advice. I will tell you now, the younger you are, the more likely someone wants to help you. I can get more into that later, but for now, just know that. So strategic networking with individuals is where you do research on people who are where you want to be. Oftentimes, it's very easy to connect with people who are where you want to be at the local level. The state level gets a little more challenging, and then at the federal level, which is national, is where you're gonna need to have some serious clout or reasons or something that pulls them to want to help you. In this case, it could be you being part of the Parchment program. Again, once I was a Bill Archer alumni, I was able to reach out to people from different parts of the country who I did not know, but they connected with me because I was an alumni. I will give another example. I'm currently looking at Georgetown University as a school for an MBA, right? I looked into people who had been part of that program, and then I reached out to a bunch of them. And the ones that got back with me and that I've talked to and have built a relationship with and have seek their wisdom and advice are people who either look like me, are Hispanic, or come from a similar background professionally, or have a tie in some capacity to the work I do. It's those connections and similarities that have drawn them to feel like I'm worth their time, if that makes sense. That's strategic networking with individuals. As for with groups, that could be for, Elena's example with orthodontics. She could begin researching what are all the college clubs within the community or within the county that are for orthodontics. It could be a community college club for orthodontics. It could be a private or public university for orthodontics. How can she get more involved with those clubs? You are a high school student, but I strongly suspect that if you were to reach out to the advisor or the president for that club or that chapter, they would not deny you and would love to have you hang out with them, right? These are all people who are already pursuing the same thing you are, but are maybe a few years ahead of you. And they can kind of give you advice on how to not make the mistakes they did and get where you want to be faster, right? That is group strategic research. And then lastly, organizational research. This is where you look up, are there any associations for orthodontics? Are there any national associations, any state associations? What orthodontic companies exist here in the community, right? From there, you can research, do they have programs where high school students can get involved in an orthodontic fellowship? Do they have internship opportunities with that association, with that company? This is where you're strategically researching how you're going to begin networking within the organization you desire to be a part of. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? So Isaiah, what I know that you're a high school student, but do you have any ideas of what you might want to do when you grow up or graduate?
Whenever I grew up, I wanted to go into either nursing, and then another was business management. And recently I learned about like what's it called? Cybersecurity.
Okay, that's cool. Those are all legendary. And you know what? You could make a lot of success in the community in any of those. So this is easy, you guys are unique. You're either part of the CAB or you're part of AVID. And that means you have some resources. The chancellor personally emails you guys. You could easily, in that case, Isaiah, email the chancellor and say, Chancellor, sir, I am looking at possibly going into business management when I grow up or graduate. Do you have any friends or professional colleagues that you would recommend I connect with? From there, the chancellor, and I know for a fact he has a lot of those connections, He could easily say, thanks for reaching out to me, Isaiah. I would love to connect you with some of my colleagues or peers. You could reach out to your ISD board of directors or board members in this case. I will tell you now, people that become board members for any organization, unless it is a bit of a joke of an organization, tend to have good connections, and they can definitely help you. And again, if you are reaching out to a board member for your home district, it would be incredible if they did not connect with you, because they were elected to serve you and make sure you succeed. Am I correct? So and again, a lot of these board members tend to be business leaders. As for nursing, organizational research or group research. What are the hospitals in the community? What are the college clubs? And again, you're going to want to make friends with college students, even if you're in high school. There's so many reasons to that. I'm not going to say the bad reasons, but the good reasons are, these kids are all older than you, and they'll view you. So for example, when I was in college, I got involved with different clubs, and some of the clubs, we were all students. Some of the clubs had kids that were younger than me. Some of the clubs had people that were older than me. This is a weird social behavior of humans, but all of us, whenever there was someone in that club who was older than us, we kind of gravitated to them as our pseudo mom or dad. They were kind of like that steady person in the group we could all joke with, but all kind of treated like the mom of the group or the dad of the group. With younger members of the club, if we were more senior in that organization or that group, we tended to treat them as kids, our siblings, or just kids that we want to help and watch out for, right?
Yeah.
It's just a weird animalistic behavior of humans that can be very useful. So keep that in mind, you never know. I will say right now, out of memory, I know that I think it's the NRH hospital, Northwich. Dang it, this is recording, so I don't want to say too much about locations or cities, just for everyone's privacy. But I will say that hospital, it used to, before COVID, have a program where high school students could volunteer. They would not be required to do a lot of medical work. However, they could engage in helping the nurses, moving equipment around, moving medical equipment around, and overall just networking with the doctors and the staff and seeing if that's something they really wanted to do, right? I think it demanded like 3 hours a week. If you do that for 6 weeks or a semester, you can kind of get a feel for if that's something you're serious about, or like, that's
So
organizational research.
So you said that's like hospitals do that, like most hospitals would do that. And would that be at the North Division Hills Hospital, you said?
Yeah, it is. And, again, COVID has changed a lot on how they proceed with these types of activities when they're not
Yeah.
staff, but that's something you can look at. And, if you can always still reach out to the org and say, you can call them and be like, hey, I'm looking at this. Is it available? And they might say, no, it's not due to COVID. And you can say, okay, thank you. Do you have any recommendations for some online opportunities that I can still engage with? And then, so they can kind of throw you a bone. But that's research and organization strategically. That is probably the biggest part of getting the ball rolling. You guys are all smart. You're young. You look cool. You guys networking and actually building those relationships, I suspect, won't be too hard for y'all. But the research is the biggest part. Next step would be identify the organizations, groups, and people. Once you've done your research, you can start narrowing down these groups. Never feel like you should not go to certain groups unless you really think they don't align with you or they're sketchy. The more groups you get in touch with, the better it is for people to know you. But more importantly, you can get a feel for if that's the community you want to be a part of. And then the last part of strategically networking is simply doing it. That's the part a lot of people fail to do, just going out there. But more importantly, it's doing it and being consistent, showing up at least once a month, if it's a once a month club meeting, or showing up once every 2 months. And the reason I say this is, I forget the man, it might have been Cicero or Seneca, but one of these two great thinkers of the ancient Roman times had a very simple rule. People need to see your face. People forget. People may not remember names. People may forget your deeds. But if they see your face consistently, by sheer memory of seeing your face every day, they will like you because they know you to some degree, versus someone they've only seen once or twice in their life, right? So you're that one guy that walks down the neighborhood waving to everyone. They may never know who the hell you are by your name or your personality or what you've done in society, but they're always like, huh, that's the guy that walks around the neighborhood every day.
Yeah.
And then, maybe one day you knock at their door and they're like, who are you? Oh, I know you. I don't know who you are, but I know you. You can say, hey, my name is Isaiah or Josh or Kathy or Lily. I walk down the neighborhood every day. And they're like, yeah, I know. I recognize you. Like, I need your help. And they'll be like, what do you need help on? They're less hesitant to assist you because they just kind of recognize you. So that's step one in being part of an organization or a club or whatever. Allowing people to recognize who you are and know who you are, at least the baseline of facial recognition. It makes them feel more familiar. Back in the day, animals were very nervous. People were nervous about socialization if they did not know you. After they've seen you a while, it gets normalized. A great example would be a friend of mine. She has raccoons and possums living in her backyard, and she loves it. They started feeding the possums one day, and the possums didn't trust them, they didn't like them, but they saw they were offering food, so they kind of tentatively took the food, right?
Yeah.
But they got to see them every so often, they got to normalize them, and even though they didn't interact, she never pet the possums or the raccoons. They saw her, they saw the food, and now she's starting to engage them personally, like saying, hi, possum, I'm naming you, your name is Toby or whatever, and the possum will react to that, right? They're no longer afraid of her because they may never have trusted her, but they now recognize her and they recognize the food and they associate the two. So that's the first step. Second step, once you're involved in these groups, is being friendly, and I don't want to say, look, this is a tough one. If you struggle with anxiety or all kinds of different challenges in life personally, I how do I frame this in a nice way? So I will say right now, to legitimize, when I was in middle school, I was very socially awkward. When I was a freshman and sophomore in college, I was getting better. No, in high school. When I was a freshman and sophomore in high school, I was getting better, but I was still shy and quiet, It was only in my junior and senior year that I started to get a hold of my challenges. And the reason I did was not because of anyone else. Obviously, there were people that were kind enough to help me and encourage me. But at the end of the day, it was up to me to acknowledge my flaws and acknowledge that they were going to impede me from long-term success if I didn't improve upon them. And then being willing to be uncomfortable. So I will fully acknowledge if any of you guys here today or watching the recording are struggling with some sort of challenge emotionally, physically or mentally, I'm not denying that. I'm acknowledging it and asking you to be brave enough to acknowledge it as well and say it is not an excuse. If it's an emotional challenge, you can always reach out to your school counselor. If that's not available, you can reach out to a Reddit group or a Facebook group or a church group, or there's so many groups that would love to help you. And you can figure out how you can begin to overcome those challenges mentally and emotionally so you can pursue what needs to be done to be better at socializing with individuals. If it's a physical challenge, again, I will not comment too much on that, but I will say that there are still a lot of resources out there online, virtually, that can help. And I will tell you now, in this world, there are dozens upon dozens of nonprofits out there. You just have to do a little work to research them and find the ones that can possibly give you a grant or help you or something, or connect you to someone who can. So never feel like you're on your own. The internet has opened the game. It's just now a matter of you taking responsibility for your life and saying, I will save myself from oblivion in doing that research work. And again, keep in mind, guys, you're an anomaly. You're here, you're listening to me, and it might take you years to kind of really let this settle into your thoughts and heart, but it is the way. I've worked with business leaders and I've worked with veterans and different individuals, and all of them have this philosophy. And those are the ones that have built things in life and succeeded. Many of them overcoming things that are far beyond what I could have ever imagined. So that's the next step, being friendly, trying to be social, trying to help others within the organization. And then the last biggest step is becoming a leader. As a person who hires people myself, I will tell you now, when I look on someone's resume and I see they volunteered for all these organizations, I will oftentimes think, why do I care? I'm not a fool. I was I was in college as well. I was involved as well. This doesn't matter. Sure, you showed up and you can put that on your resume. What matters though is if I see that you're, a student government senator, or a student council member, or you started your own small project, or you started your own small business, even if it was not even if you did not make any money in that business, or you were a volunteer, but you were only like an assistant, or a club leader or a club officer. I see that you're taking initiative, and that's what I take more seriously. And then I can look at, okay, you were an officer, but were you just an officer layman, or were you trying to do something good? And then I can look at what you actually accomplished as an officer. So the next and third and biggest step is, if you want to network successfully, professionally, and even emotionally, because success does tend to raise confidence, you got to be a leader, man. And sometimes being a good leader means following someone else's lead and learning from them. That is a great way to learn from people who have suffered and endured and have improved themselves. And then you can take that wisdom to your own heart. All right. But be a leader. You gotta. Being a leader in your community will be challenging. Being a leader in your club or your group will maybe be uncomfortable, but I will say this again, and I'm going to stress it. In life, if you want to be exceptionally successful, even if you're just a nurse or a manager or whatever, you're going to have to be the leader. And this is another thing. This is a quote from Game of Thrones, but it's true, and I've seen it with my own eyes. Titles breed titles. Let that sink in. Titles tend to breed titles. What that means is, once you have one professional title or one leadership role, it will naturally feed into others. I'll give you a great example. When I was a student government senator, that was a title. That title opened the doors for me to connect with different groups that may not have cared for me just because I was some random student. When I became a student government president, that title opened the door to the campus president inviting me to meetings that he thought would benefit student government. It opened the door to me connecting with state leaders, and they respected, or at least they assumed, that I had earned it in some capacity, right? They assumed that I was a leader. I may not have actually had more than 10 people in my organization. Maybe I was not the best leader, but I had that title that I got somehow, and that opened the door to new opportunities because people saw that title and judged me based on it. And afterwards they might get to know me, and they might have thought, this guy's a schmuck, or they might have thought this guy's brilliant, but they saw the title and they thought, okay, I'll give this guy a shot to talk with us. Does that make sense to you guys? But more importantly, when you're a leader in your community, naturally you're going to meet other leaders. You're going to meet other A players, other people who care about things. And these guys tend to, it depends, some of these leaders tend to only hang out with what they call A players. Others try to help others that are what they call B players, whatever you want to judge it by. But the point is, it's kind of like that old saying, game recognizes game, if you're a leader of one club, it's easier to collaborate with other leaders and build those relationships. Schools might respect you more and want to help you more because they already are gambling you're going to succeed in life. It just compounds interest. You know what I mean? And that's where you meet other amazing individuals. I will give an example. When I was a Bill Archer Fellow, I may not have been the greatest Bill Archer Fellow at the time. I still had a lot to learn. But that title of an Archer Fellow, the legacy it possessed, opened the doors to people who did not know who I was, but were just judging me based on the book cover, which was the program, right? So that's the last and biggest thing on strategically networking. If you can implement all of these, your wisdom and experience will eventually get you where you want to go. And maybe it won't. Maybe you want to be a Navy SEAL, or you want to be a major business leader or athlete. Maybe it might take a lifetime to accomplish that. Or maybe for whatever reason, you just can't be it, there's outside powers impeding you from that goal. At that point, what you've done will still give you rewards. You will still have something to fall back on. You will still have friends and leaders to lean on, and you can, maybe, who knows, maybe someone will pull strings for you. They'll say, I've known this guy for 5 years. He's a good man. He works hard. She's a great gal. She's brilliant. And they'll connect with one of their buddies and say, hey, dude, let's help this guy, but you will never know if that is an opportunity waiting to happen until you become a leader, you engage the game, you do the mental work. And strategic networking is very simple. I've basically summarized to you, in my experience at least, others might have different advice, what I suspect are the key core elements. It only took about 45 minutes, maybe less, but life is simple. Life at the end of the day is very simple. There's great ways to analyze it, to overthink it, but if you condense it down to a page, the wisdom of quotes have merit. And that is what I'm trying to tell you guys. Networking is not hard. It's just a matter of taking a little time, trying to understand who you are as a person, and then beginning that work. And again, after this workshop, you guys have my email. You can always email me, and then I can start trying to figure out how we can serve you and help you. I have volunteers who can do that work with me. We will serve and build you up. So this workshop is just to get those thoughts going in your head and let you start thinking. So I'm going to run through some quick notes I have on some other things that popped up in my mind. And then I will end the recording and we can go to questions, and then we can end the workshop in a timely manner. Here's some good strategies for networking. As a high school student or a college student, start a club or a chapter, join a club or a chapter, aim to join one club or chapter that you want to join for fun, aim to join one club or chapter that will be political. Volunteer if possible, and I would strongly recommend preferable if there is an option, intern, intern for an organization that aligns with you. The world is changing. No one wants to admit it, but your degree does not really matter unless you're a coder or a STEM or a medic. And even then, it still doesn't matter too much because there are thousands others just like you. What really matters is the experience, the professional experience, and the friends you have who can connect you to those jobs. Internships are the latchkey. You guys are high school students. I don't know your backgrounds or lives, so I will not try to assume, but find internships that might let you work for 3 hours a week or 2 hours. Heck, try to find online internships while you're freshmen, sophomores, juniors in high school, or seniors in high school. Because I will tell you now, even if you have to work while you're in high school, it is going to be even harder when you're in college, especially if you don't get grants or life throws a curveball. So try to at least find an internship aligning with your long-term goals that allows you, despite being only a high school student, to engage. There's a meme going around where, people are students that just graduated from college. It says, how many years of work experience you have in that industry? That is a very valid meme because it is true. Corporations are getting a little weird about how they're demanding work experience from their fresh applicants. But at the same time, these corporations are acknowledging that your generation is starting to become more proactive at working on your career goals when you're in high school. So that is a reality you're going to have to accept. The last thing I will say before we end the recording is politics. Even if you're apolitical, even if you don't care about politics, I hate to say it, but I would strongly suggest you guys begin looking at where you lean. Are you a moderate? Do you lean right of center? Do you lean left of center? And the reason I say this is because you will need, and I strongly encourage this, you don't need to, but politically and strategically, you probably need to get involved in a local political club or chapter or group. The reason I say this is because as much as I don't encourage students to be political unless they're passionate about it or there's a worthy cause, in my experience, a lot of these clubs, they could be a Republican club, it could be a young Democrat club, it could be a libertarian club. They often have people of different ages and professional backgrounds attending those club meetings. Now, in my experience, I'll say the Republican or Democratic clubs tend to have the most well put together networks. So I would advocate to pick the lesser evil if you're not political, or if you at least have some similarities with these works, pick the one that aligns most with you. And the reason is, you could go to a random left of center or right of center club, depending on your community, and there could be attorneys there, there could be judges there, There could be business leaders there. And more than likely, if it's a right of center organization, there will be business leaders and judges there. And why I say this is relevant to you is because you may not care very much about politics, but if you show up consistently to those meetings, and most of these happen once a month, they recognize your face. It gets back to I recognize you. If you're comfortable talking to them, even if it's just small talk once every so often, it helps. And that judge may not be a nurse. Hell, he might not even care about nursing or medical, but he's a judge. He's probably in his 50s, if not 60s. He probably knows doctors who just so happen to be maybe a buddy of his from college, or his daughter is a doctor or whatever, or his son is a businessman or a banker or whatever. The point is, eventually you can say to your group, hey, club president, I need your help. I'm looking to find an internship. And he can say, oh, Judge John over there, his son is in that field. Maybe he can throw you a connection. And that is the keystone. That is where politics, if you're not political, is useful. Now, again, this is where strategic networking comes in line. Sometimes you're going to meet people you really appreciate and value in places you don't really like. You may be, again, not trying to pressure you guys, but just telling you right now so you're aware. If you're apolitical, you still will probably have to help them sometimes. Maybe it's calling some people, or helping organize the event, or helping clean up after the club meeting. But building relationships in politics is going to unfortunately be imperative to your success. And I say this because this is a flash, this is something to know. Most politicians tend to be leaders. And this gets back to what I was saying earlier. Titles breed titles. Leaders tend to stick with leaders. Most politicians tend to be people who are business leaders or attorneys, general attorneys, attorney generals, whatever you want to call it, or directors for nonprofits, or et cetera, right? Most people involved in these political clubs tend to aspire to something powerful. And if you're in that room with them, if you're amicable or just generally there, kind of helping, volunteering, it makes it easier for you to possibly ask for help or get a pointer from them. I will tell you right now, I won't tell you what party I work with, but I was at a convention, a state convention, a local convention or Senate convention, whatever you call it. And that's where I met Chris Dries, the board of trustees board member for Birdville ISD. I showed up, I hung out, I met him there. We talked, we both had like-minded goals. I really respect him. And then I believe it was 5 months later, I called him or texted him and said, hey, I would love your advice on how I could possibly start a school program, right? I didn't tell him I wanted his help. I didn't tell him I wanted to build this with him. I simply said, I want your advice. And from there, Parchment was born. We refined ourselves and we're still growing and maturing, right? But you see where I'm getting at? It would not have been possible if I did not have the humility to acknowledge, while I'm a moderate or whatever, I do care about certain issues and I was willing to get involved. So with that being said, I'm going to close this recorded workshop, and then we can start questions and Q&A. I'll share my email in the chat. And then if you guys want, we can start connecting more proactively on how I can support you, or I can connect you with someone who can support you. And then again, I would strongly encourage you apply to be a Parchment Fellow through that link I shared, because the way I've put it, the way I explained it to the chancellor and the way I shared it in that document earlier this year, you don't have to be, you can complete all the content over the course of 2 years, as long as you are still a student of that school. So why not try to pursue it? Why not try to become a Parchment Fellow? I will say though, if you can get all of it done within a year, it is easier for us because we're still a small team, we're still growing, and it'll be easier for us to track your success and your progress. Versus if it's already a year and a half in, and we might lose you in the roster of other students. So with that being said, I'm going to close this recording and we can go from there. All righty. I believe I have stopped the recording right now.